welcome the head beard of Social Media News Live. And he's Jeff Sieh, you're not. Please welcome Mr. Jeff Sieh. How are you, sir?
Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh. Yes, Google Plus. Take a drink of coffee. Sure, it's coffee, Chris. We know better.
Oh, wait. I do.
It's
I
not
have
water.
a water
It's
bottle
tequila.
Here.
Yeah, it's probably tequila.
Tequila.
But yeah, it's so good. It's so good to be over here.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the beautiful, gorgeous gentleman in the center of your screen does a lot of things. And one of the things that I really enjoy about Jeff Sieh is the way he orchestrates a live show and a podcast and really takes it as the center of one thing and then pulls it apart and turns it into like hundreds of other things. And we try to emulate a lot of things with content creators that we admire, Jeff being one of them. And having him on our show for the second time is something that I'm stoked about. And Jeff, I know you're starting a course for people for Descript to learn Descript, a 101, I should say, and really a beginner type of deal. And I think you being someone that has started live streaming before the webcam was even invented and doing this for so long, sometimes you forget, right? There's this thing called a curse of knowledge where you have all of this technique and all of this stuff that you've done over the years, and you just assume everybody knows everything. And now you're in this situation where you're years along and there has been changes, but there's some things that really haven't changed about live streaming and putting together a show and putting together a podcast. So someone who is just getting into this thing and they see all of this stuff and they see what Jeff Sieh's doing, what Monty Weaver's doing, what Jim Fuse is doing, what all these people are doing. Ross Brand is now in the chat on Facebook as well. So when we put aside the curse of knowledge and we say to someone, hey, here's where you start. Here's where you start. Here's the first thing you need to think about doing before you put together the Jeff Sieh tree. You got to start with these seeds. What would that be?
So I talk about Google Plus a lot, but I also talk about on my show is Lou Mongello and Momentum. And I have this on my desk. He gives this little challenge coin when you go to his conference. And I've been lucky enough to speak there a couple of times, but on the back of it, it says this little quote. It says, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And that's by Walt Disney. And that's one of the things that I think that we can get hung up on gear. And I know I did nothing. You want to wait till everything's perfect. You got enough time and all that stuff. You just got to do it. Even if there's nothing wrong. Just start with your phone. I wish I would have started a long time ago. So I think that's the biggest thing is just do it. Turn on the camera. Other things you're going to have to decide on what kind of show you're going to want to do. And that's just doing research. I typically like to do what you guys do is an interview show. I love doing interview shows or having somebody with me. Like when I've done shows, I've always had either people on there with me or when we first started Social Media News Live, I had Grace Duffy as my co-host. We left another program and came and started doing our own. And so having that together where we can bounce back and forth, when you're producing a show, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Like when you put me up full screen, you can look ahead at the comments and Jim's talking, you can be like making sure the stream is still going out and all that stuff. So that's the kind of show I like to do. Some people like to do like solo shows. You mentioned Kirk Nugent. He does a solo show where he gets up and talks a lot of time and teaches. Bradley Teaches is another one. Marshall Fox, who I'm going to have on my show tomorrow, does the same thing. He teaches live. That's fine if you want to do it. For me, you just got to figure out what kind of show you want to do. So do research and then just study. If you're doing an interview show, I have had the best interviewer of all time, in my opinion, is Johnny Carson. And so there's a channel for free you can watch that's all just Johnny Carson. And look how he asks questions. Look how he makes it entertaining. Look how he handles things when they don't go right, because they didn't go right a lot of times.
Yep.
And even today, watch the late night hosts, how they're asking questions, the way they're bouncing things up. I know when I started Social Media News Live, I looked at how you guys were doing things. I looked at your branding, how you were doing it, how you were doing the pattern interrupt on your short form stuff. So you want to do a lot of studying. Just don't click a button and go live, but study the things study the people that you want to be like. You don't want to rip them off, but you want to study those. Like I really wanted to do better at community. So I jumped into Lou's group, which is all about community. He does it better than anybody I have known. Ecams, their community is amazing. the way they foster community. Most of the people they have working for them started in the community. So
Yep.
those are the things that I would say. Do research, just do it, just go live, break things, and then just keep going and be consistent.
Break things. I don't even know how to pronounce this person's name, but every day you put it off, you will be more or less of something else. It will never be perfect, but you'll never get closer to perfect until you
That's awesome.
start. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Another quote that I love is by John Acuff. He says, what is it? 80% perfect and shared with the world always changes more lives than 100% perfect and stuck in your head. So that's one of the things I really like.
Yeah, I think you said something early there, Jeff. You talked about you prefer a show to where you've got somebody else to bounce some things off of. It's one of those things where if you just go solo, especially for someone who's just starting out, that is super, super intimidating. So it was one of those things where I think right now I could go solo and work my way through it. Jim and I, when we decided we wanted to do this show, being able to work together and surround yourself with another person or other people who can help you through that, who can help sharpen the irons and just be honest with each other too. Don't you think it's important that you surround yourself with someone that's not just going to tell you what you want to know?
Yeah.
Or hear, I should say.
I have a lot of friends they'll just tell me like, no, that's stupid. No, that color looks bad. That color for that logo.
Don't talk about Eric Fisher that way.
Yes, and I tell this story in one of my talks where when I was first doing the manly Pinterest tips, and I had it as it's got my beard on it. It's an old one, but I use it for my podcast. And it was blue, but it was that blue that it was like if you were slowly choking a Smurf, it'd be that kind of color. It was horrible and hideous. And my friend Elisa, I sent it to her, and my friend Elisa Meredith says, "No, that's horrible. You can't use that." I'm like, okay. And so having those type of friends, yes, you're right. It's very important that you have those type of people who will speak truth when it sucks. The other thing I would say is practice. There's a lot of people who I would go like, they practice like what button to press. I would practice because there's so many things to do and it's easy to be overwhelmed when you finally hit that live button. Is I would sit there and practice pushing the buttons. And I have a way I set up my Stream Deck that I can almost do it without looking at it anymore. But practice, bring up those lower thirds or switching cameras. Chris just did. Practice that. You can go live in a private Facebook group and see how it looks later. I would practice. I would sit there and practice and think about, okay, if my internet connection dies, what am I going to do? Because it will happen. It will. It's just things are. I'd tell another story where I had cashed in all my. It was way back in the beginning in the Google Plus days. That I cashed in. It was my first big guest, and I got Guy Kawasaki. He didn't know me at all, right? At all. And so I had got everything ready. I was all set. It was like my first solo show. Like it was the first time I did, I think, manly Pinterest tips by myself. And I had a water bottle, and it was one of those. This isn't it, but it was a plastic one. And he was in the green room, and I getting ready to go live, and I went and hit the side of my desk with it, and the whole bottom fell out. And so all this ice water drained into my crotch, and hey, we're live. And so I'm doing the entire show with ice water underpants. And so it was I was very alert, but those things will happen. They will happen, and you need to be prepared for it because, once so many bad things have happened to you, nothing really phases you anymore. Like I have lost power, like complete power. The alarms are going off, and I knew what to do. I knew how to restart the show, get a new key, and not panic. And know that you are going to panic the first couple times it happens. You're going to just, oh my gosh, what happened? I lost my guest. And you'll learn how to go on without a guest because I've had to do that before as well. So
that reminds me, and Chris probably remembers New Year's, the New Year's 2023 show for the Tim and Jim show. I was producing and had not thought Tim should be in as well. And we had just a quick power surge, and Troy Sandage was like big on screen and everybody else is small. And my internet and everything is out, and I'm trying to reboot. I have no way to call anybody for a few minutes, so I finally got back up. Probably, I don't know. It seemed like forever. Maybe it was 10 minutes, but it's just that whole thing of, or at least I don't think anybody panicked. It was just hard for the next person to speak. But what I did do is I was like, all right, I went and bought these surge protectors that run a battery and I put it on all my stuff. So even at a minimum, my internet and everything will run for a few minutes if something like that were to happen again, because you just never know. So you learn these things.
So another piece of advice that I would say, and it's not one that I don't think a lot of people think about, but anytime your camera is on, act like it's live, because somebody can be recording it, or you can actually be. So it comes from a story. I had a friend of mine on, they were co-hosting, and the show's over. Thanks everybody. Appreciate you. Share it out to everybody. And then I said, okay, the show's over. And we started talking smack about somebody that we shouldn't have.
Oh no.
And it was like, and we were doing on for 15 minutes. And then somebody, I saw a comment comes on, hey, you guys know you're still live? I'm like, holy crap. And so I was able to get it and pull it down really quickly. And that person we were talking smack about never found out. But always treat your live, when you're talking to somebody like pre-show or after the show, always treat it like you're going out to everyone. So and don't talk smack about people. That's just not nice.
And usually when something goes wrong and you're freaking out, it's not the end of the world either. You're not going to die. If your power goes out and your live stream goes down, you're not going to die. Denise says you need a surge pants protector. Okay, that's we'll add that to the carousel.
I just need one normally. I think it's the brand name is called Depends.
Yes.
Depends. I just wear them all the time now.
And Ross Brand locked himself out before a show and had to break in to get to the show on time. That's an amazing story.
Wow.
That's funny. I'd love to see Ross crawling through a window trying to get to his live show. That just is funny.
Powers of Marketing in the house. Megan Powers, thanks for joining us over on the YouTubes. And if anyone's joining us from any of the other places, it's fine to hang out there if you want. But if you want to come over to Amazon, just go to dealcasters.live. And speaking of Amazon, Jeff, Social Media News Live, as long as I think that's still the name. Right?
Yes, it's going to change as soon as I get all the assets together. You know how that is when you're trying to change something and doing a little bit of rebrand. Same kind of show, same kind of flow, but we are going to change the brand. It needs a refresh. That's what I'm doing.
I've said this before, and I mean it, and you know it. I think it's my favorite show, my favorite live show on the internet. It is, and there's a lot of different reasons. It's not just because I know you, and we've seen each other at conferences, and have that social media connection and all of that stuff. But I think the show is really interesting, and it helps me, and it serves me. And I think when we talk about people that just need to get started, like you're talking about, I think one of the other things you got to realize is you got to know who you're talking to. And when you know who you're talking to, then you know the kind of people you can bring on as guests, because those people will help you to help them, to help the people that have issues. There's lots of times you'll have a guest on tell me again, the guy who does Magi.
Dustin.
Yeah. And like all the stuff that all of your guests talk about it's like sometimes it doesn't relate specifically to me because it may be like a social media platform that I don't do, but they have elements that are evergreen across multiple platforms. It's maybe specific related to Instagram, or maybe specific related to Pinterest, or specific related to creating a course or something like that. But there's always some really interesting things that you can pull out, and you do a really good job of including the community. How would you work with or tell somebody who's getting started, what are some key sort of tactical things that you could do when you're putting together a show like you do in order to pull in that community?
So one of the things that I try to be that I just built, this kind of my core strategy is like, it's not about me. And I hope that people can see that I am so excited. I mean, Friday's my favorite day because I get to talk to people and bring people in and introduce new people to my audience. And I love it. Because I get to just talk with them. And luckily that people think that the questions I ask are something that they find interesting, because I really enjoy it. I make it about my guest. It is always about my guest. In fact, if you look at my repurpose, which I do a lot of repurposing of my show, I'm not really on it. It's usually a question that they are answering. And to me, what that does, it lets me get really great guests because they know that it's not about me. It'll be their show, and I'm focused on them, and I repurpose it a ton. And that also, I don't have a hard time getting guests because they know it's going to be about them. We've all seen those shows that you can tell that the host is just waiting for the guests to stop talking so they can talk. So they can pitch their services or whatever, or always bring it back to them. I really don't want that at all. And you mentioned the community, and we have such a great community over there. And I have 3 sections to my show almost every time. And I have 5 questions that I come up before the show that I send to my guests for each of those sections. But I tell my guests, like, we may not get to any of these, or it might bounce around, because I will pull in my community's comments before I'll go to my questions, because I want it to be about the community. And in fact, what I've done, and this is one of the things we kind of talked about earlier about being able to switch and having a partner so you can bounce around and keep things going, is that if there's a question that I was going to ask, but I see that my community has asked something similar, I'll pull that one in instead and not ask mine, because I want it to be their avatar on screen. I want it to be their comment. People don't realize I think people will wait to the end of the show because they want to have a chance to have their question answered. I think that's a strategy you can use in your live show, that they know that if they ask a question, I'm going to try to answer it. I think it gets people coming back and people commenting. And in fact, people will actually take screenshots of their question and post it to Instagram or to the socials or to Twitter. Gary Stockton does that all the time. He'll take a screenshot of his question being asked or answered and then post it to different places. So it's just a cool thing. People love to see their face on screen, and I try to do that as much as I can.
And Jeff, I remember like one of the first times I saw you speak, which was at, I believe, 2018 at Social Media Marketing World. You were talking at that point really about much more about like visual stuff, fonts and colors and that. So when did you like really get more into doing this video stuff? Because I think one thing that I think is encouraging, and I know Chris and I talk about this, because Chris hasn't, which people may not believe, Chris hasn't been a video editor all of his life. He's just put the work in. And I think you as well. When did you really kind of fall in love with this idea of creating, or I guess doing video editing?
So I've been doing video editing that's the first thing I started with my company. I was doing corporate videos back with the mini DV tapes. Remember those? Oh my gosh. Those before even solid state drives. Yeah. So I was doing it with that. One of my services that I would offer was remember the CD-ROM business cards that you could have like your business card and you would give it to people and it would spin in the disc and then make a presentation. So I would do those. I actually had a robotic machine that would take it and duplicate it and then print it. So I did that for a while. So I think I've been doing video since Premiere 2 came out. I remember when I got a big brick of a hard drive and it was like 380 megs. And I was like, yes, I'll never need it again, any more space. But that, of course. So I've been doing video for a long time. So it's always been part of my backbone. And then when live video came out with Google Hangouts on air, and I don't know why they dropped the ball on that, because you had comment tracker, you could bring in comments back then. And so having that engagement, one, I'm just lazy. And if you do video, you have all this stuff that you can repurpose afterwards. Like you can have a podcast, you can have a blog post, you can have all these clips now on social media. It's always been the backbone of it. And I am not a trained designer. When I worked for a company, there's a designer who took me under his wing and he was really good and taught me a lot of stuff. And I don't consider myself a designer at all, but I enjoy dabbling. But I really like the visual aspect of everything, video and then animation and all that kind of stuff. It's just always fascinating.
And I'm going to take a bit of a left turn here because it's just, this conversation reminds me, because we're going in the Wayback Machine and we're talking about floppy disks and all of that.
But Google Plus.
Right. And hang on, let me take another drink here. Yeah, Google Plus. Taste goes down nice.
That's filling.
So the future. And the latest, I don't know if you saw the TikTok of Mike Alton on the Agora Pulse thing, and it's this AI TikTok that they did, and it's fantastic. So shout out to the Agora Pulse team for putting that thing. But there's just so much right now, this booming, just slap AI, slap that sticker on everything. Remember when albums were coming out and they'd slap the parental advisory thing on it, and that it sold more because it had the parental advisory. Now just slap the AI onto anything. Oh, this is AI. This didn't used to be, but we're calling it that. But anyway, I think you were on Ian Anderson Gray's show recently, and they were talking about the future of live streaming. And it relates to the community aspect of what we talked about earlier. And I wanted to really let you speak to that because I think we're all just super nerdy about everything, Descript and all of these AI tools and ChatGPT, and we're using all the things. But there's a lot of things that I think related to the future that don't have to do with AI that AI can't do. And I wanted to get your take on the future as it relates to AI and video and live streaming.
First of all, I agree with you with AIs being slapped on everything. My Instapot is going to have AI enabled. Like they have, remember Wi-Fi and it's on your fridge now. And so it'll cover AI refrigerators. So I am excited. One, there's a couple of reasons for AI. I know it's scary. If I was a copywriter or even an agency, I'd be a little nervous because it is it's going to replace some jobs. And it's not, as of now, humans are better, right? But the sad thing is companies will do, if it's okay and I don't have to hire somebody, that'll work. That's just the way a lot of companies operate. And I can see that's going to replace a lot of even social media managers, even stuff that I have done in the past. I think it's going to be replaceable. But for live video, I think it's going to really drive people to this stuff because for one, when they see the written word, they're going to be like, okay, it says it's not AI, but I don't know if I believe it or not. I don't know if I can trust the written word as much as I used to, like blog posts and stuff like that. Plus, it can be churned out at just crazy rates right now. So I think people are going to be hungry for live video, especially for the community aspect of it, because one, loneliness is at an epidemic. The Surgeon General even had something that released, I think, last month about it. And there's AI cannot replace me going in and going, Ross, I would love to have seen you locked out and the panic on your face on your show. And AI can't interact with the audience. I don't think it can ever do it to the way you might be having an avatar up there and you might be able to type something in and it might be able to read it back in a realistic way. But the interaction that we have and like we have as between you and Chris and I, that just can't happen. Inside jokes. It's not going to know our Google Plus inside joke. So I just really think that people are going to be hungry for it and being able to engage in ways and be able to trust it. Who's going to AI this? Really? It's this weird look. No one's going to do that. It's going to be real. And I think people are going to hunger for the realness of conversations like this, interacting with the audience in ways that it's just amazing to me that this tool that we have now that we can go live and reach everywhere across the globe and talk to people. That's amazing. And people we just go, oh, it's live video. Like this, I would have killed for this when I would have started out. And then now we have this opportunity. And I think businesses are going to have to embrace it if they want to have a community and reach out to clients and leads.
Jeff, Roberto Blake has said some stuff recently that is interesting. He actually thinks, and I think it's more his opinion, it's not necessarily something that YouTube's saying, that actually like longer live streams are even going to do better. People are going to want to jump on these 3-4 hour live streams. And I don't know, maybe that's the case because to your point, people want to have that interaction. What do you think about that?
So even doing stuff for my show tomorrow with Marshall Fox, where he actually does live designing. Like he takes somebody's logo and revamps it live. I can see that kind of stuff, like training and like working through and letting people see your process. I think that's going to be really cool. I think it's cool right now. Have people watch me carve wood over on Amazon and they'll comment and they like it. And it's because they see that it's real, it's tangible, and I guess it's a little bit relaxing for them. So I think that brands that embrace this and embrace it first and build that community now are going to be way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think it's about using it creatively, right? I just feel like I think about the way the music business went through the ebbs and flows when I was a part of it. And when digital music went nuts with Napster, the companies like that I worked for, major record labels, were like, listen, it's a lower quality file and people want to see the artwork and they want to listen to higher quality. And I'm like, listen, the kids, they don't care. They're trading their hard drives around. It's just, and so until people finally said, hey, this is what the people want, then finally the major labels were like, okay, we have to figure out a way to monetize this. And I think they went through there was a whole 10 years of ridiculousness until finally it was like, we came out of it. And I think with AI, everything is happening so quickly and there's so many things and there's so much stuff happening. It's just a matter of hang on and utilize it. And if you are worried that you're going to get replaced by something, then start to figure out how you're not going to get replaced.
Yeah.
And it's not, because I don't think it's going anywhere but up at this point.
Yeah. And I think it's going to make us be better storytellers. The stuff that like Adobe's coming out with, like the wire removal and the content fill, the generative fill that you can do, like in After Effects now, where you can remove things and it builds it for you. You can and it's just amazing. I think it's going to make us better storytellers. Listen, things are going to change, right? And I said this on Ian's show. You don't have a lot of blacksmiths on corners anymore, right? You still have blacksmiths, but there's not as many of them around. And I don't like change, really. I don't. I want my Saturday morning cartoons back. I really do.
Totally. And pro wrestling on Saturday. Yeah.
Yes. But you have to embrace change, but you don't have to like it. And I compare it to like when you go to a family reunion and that aunt with the soggy mustache comes and tries to kiss you. Listen. You don't have to like it, but you still need to give Auntie a hug, right? You still have to do it. But it's that kind of thing. You do have to embrace change, but you don't.
I think the choking a Smurf, the depends with
word picture, see visual marketing. That's what it is.
Yes, and now the ant with the soggy mustache.
We all had one.
It's trending on Twitter. Hashtag soggy mustache. Okay, so you're about to do this Descript thing, and I know you just rolled out of doing something with Descript on Tim and Jim's show, so we won't get too in-depth. And for those of you who are watching, the Tim and Jim show is another show that Dr. Fuse does, and you got to check that out. But Descript is one tool I think that is becoming like the essential thing for podcasters, right? Like the essential tool. Because you can be simple with it. It does like amazingly complicated things, but it feels like this is something you can start and then eventually grow into. Are there any other tools, whether they're software or hardware related, that you would suggest to people who are not necessarily at your level? Hey, I'm looking to kind of level up a little bit, and maybe not necessarily. I'm not talking about getting a more expensive microphone necessarily, but are there some things that you feel like are important for people to kind of maybe check out?
So a couple things. One of the things this is basic, I think, but a lot of times as content creators, one of the things that we miss out on is capturing our ideas, right? How many times have you had an idea in the shower, and then you forgot about it, or you didn't write it down at night? And so being able to capture those, I think that for me, when I was able to figure that out and have a system for me where I didn't lose those ideas, that's huge for me. So I use an app called Roam Research. And what it does is it's an app, and but it lets me jot down ideas and tag them really easily. And so it actually puts them in a database, and it works the way I think. So I really like it. Some people use Notion. My friend Eric Fisher had a guy on, I think it's Tiago Forte.
Yes.
He did a book called Building a Second Brain, really good stuff. I would suggest reading that, because half of your problem will be coming up with ideas and not letting them go off into the ether and don't know what happened to that.
That's a huge problem for me.
Yes. So being able to do that, and plus I sleep better because I'm able to offload everything, know that it's captured, and I can return to it if I want. So for me, that's a big thing. The other tool for people who are wanting to create content, especially live video, I just think I love Descript. It does a lot of things, but I think you're going to have to get a professional video editing software, non-linear editing tool. I know, Chris, you use Final Cut Pro, which is a great one. I use Premiere. I've been using it for ages. DaVinci Resolve is actually free, but it's really powerful. So I would get one of those three if you're going to dive into this, because sometimes you just need to be able to do that things. And plus, there's so much stock stuff that you can get for creating titles and lower thirds that are already put together that you can just drop in and do it really quickly and not have to learn how to adjust the kerning on your text to make it go. It's already done for you. So a professional system like Final Cut, Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, I would suggest. And I would learn I think text-based editing is here to stay. I still think there's going to be a use case for the things I just mentioned. But even Adobe has embraced text-based editing inside of Premiere. So that's going to be a skill that you're going to need to learn, I think, going forward as well. The AI tools are going to get better and better, but you're still going to need to learn how to edit and learn how to tell a story. Just chumping up clips and dropping them in a timeline doesn't make you a video editor. You need to figure out like how to hook an audience. You need to, and Chris does a great job with this, with his editing, and I study his stuff, the way he does it, the way he catches people's attention. So study people like that. I guess those are off the top of my head, the tools that you would need.
I think that's I think what you just said right there is so key that a lot of people don't do is study other people. And it's, don't be afraid. And like, even if I tried to copy everything that Jeff Sieh does, it still wouldn't be Jeff Sieh. Like, I look at it like, here I go back to music again. So if you play an instrument or you sing or you do something musically related, you have influences, right? But chances are you tried to sing like Whitney Houston or Johnny Cash, or you sat down to play a Flea bass line, and you may not get it exactly, but somehow that became an influence on how you are, what your DNA is. You don't want to be exactly that. And I think it's important to study other people like that. And the other thing that you mentioned related to the video editing software is that those things can be so daunting, right? But there's so much free YouTube classes out there that, like, that's how I learned Final Cut. Like, I had iMovie on my Mac and I was using this and I was like, boy, I want to be able to do something else. And so I started watching videos from Kevin Colby. Yeah. And I was watching Kevin Colby's videos and I was like, I'm getting Final Cut because I can figure out how to do this and I can figure out how to do that. And DaVinci's just another example. That's free. And then you go onto YouTube and there's tons of people that will tell you how to put together these videos. But once they tell you how to do that stuff, you still have to add your human element. Everyone's talking about, have you used Opus Clip or Opus, what is it, Opus Pro?
Yeah, Opus Clips. That's the one that creates the shorts out of your links of your video.
Oh, no, I have not tried that yet. I think Jim told me about that the other day.
Yeah, you basically take a YouTube link from one of your videos, or you can upload your own file, and it will, even if it's a widescreen video, it'll find like an area to where it'll make it a vertical video. And it's kind of like the first time you tried ChatGPT, you're like, you didn't expect it to be as good as it was, right? You go, oh wow, this actually worked. But here's my only issue is that I got it to where I liked it, but I didn't like it for me. Like I was like, this is really good, but I would have done this, and I would have done this, and I would have done this. So let me see if I can pull it down and then adjust it. And by the time I did all that, I was like, I might as well have just done it myself.
Exactly. That's the way I land too. I can't wait to try it. If anything that'll shorten it, I think is worth doing. One of the things, and this is a hack that it took me a while to learn, and it goes to your point about the tons of tutorials everywhere on YouTube, was that it's not so much to learn every bit about things. I've forgotten so much about Photoshop and Premiere and After Effects I'm always Googling it. But the thing is, I know what the definitions are. I know what a mask is, but I may not remember how to apply that to that specific layer. And so I can Google how to animate a mask in Google, and then I'll get these YouTube videos that'll teach me how to do that. So I would say, like, when you're learning something, make yourself a little glossary, because you will forget what button to press. But if you can remember, okay, this is what a mask is, this is what, this term is, that gets you so you can Google it. And so once you just have a glossary or know what to call it, then you're golden, because you can just Google it and find the answer to that problem that you have while you're working.
And I think what I've discovered too, because you guys have definitely been further ahead of me in the video editing process, it's kind of like a lot of things, like with sports, it's the fundamentals. Everything pretty much uses that same basic fundamental layers and this and that. And so it doesn't matter which software you use, they're all basically doing that same thing initially. It really becomes, what are those extra things you need? Or right, you're a Mac user, so you might want to use Final Cut. Maybe you don't want to do this subscription for Adobe, but if you're on a PC, I can't use Final Cut. But it's the fundamentals. If you were like on one system and went to another, you can start to understand that. And even with Descript, you're seeing the same stuff applies. And now, now you're just adding in, how you affect audio and templates, right? Everybody starts to talk about templates. And I think it's really good stuff. And to your point, just go out there and go to YouTube University, or even better, go to the Jeff Sieh Descript 101 class on that.
That's right. And the other thing is you'll learn how to, I can read a waveform. So I know where cut is, or a breath sound is going to start happening. And you can apply that. I can add that I can actually take clips that aren't the exact length that I need and seamlessly edit them together on the beat, so I can have that piece of music fit my video perfectly. So you'll learn tricks like that as you go along, because you've learned skills. But once again, learn those, like what Jim was saying, learn the basics, learn what they're called. And then I'm always Googling stuff. And I've been using the Adobe suite of projects since I started, like I said, in Premiere 2 or something like that. But I forget all that stuff. So,
yeah, one of the temptations is when you start using a lot of this software that does simplify the process for you, and you start churning out quantitatively more content. The trick is, like, if you've got now instead of 4 pieces of content, now you have 17 pieces of content that you want to spit out everywhere. Making sure you didn't take shortcuts on the 17 and you're actually speaking to someone with that content. Right. And like you said, it's very difficult to tell a story in 1 minute on a YouTube short. You're probably not going to be able to tell a story in a minute. All right. That's a huge challenge. But what you can do is be interesting or entertain someone. Or educate someone. You can educate someone in a minute. Like, you may be able to solve their problem. Do you have a problem with, is your kitchen sink stopped up? I have this item that unstops sinks. It does this and does this. Here's a link for it. That could solve somebody's problem in a minute, right? So that could be a really popular video. So I think lots of times somebody will just say, hey, here's my big podcast, and I'm just going to chop it up, and here's 17 1-minute clips. What are they saying? Are they doing anything for you?
And there's no start, beginning, or end. It's like, they just stop. And so I don't really like that. But a lot of times I'm able to get and have a question and have a little bit of an answer. And a lot of times I can get that in under a minute or edit it down to under a minute. And that's why I structure the show that way. And that's another takeaway for your audience is, like, when you're planning your show, your live show or piece of content, think about how you can repurpose it later, and it will save you a bunch of time. That's why I have those 3 sections and those questions, because it gives me a structure that I can go to every week. It's not a big, what am I going to talk about? I know I have 3 structured thing, and I have questions underneath there, and I can actually use those as repurposable evergreen content. And I try to ask evergreen questions that will get those evergreen answers.
Love it.
You're a better planner than I am, Jeff.
It looks that way. And it's because I've screwed up so much in the past. And also Grace set me up. Like, she set me up before she moved on to have all this, her documents and her stuff.
It's systems. It comes down to systems. Yeah. Once you get those in place, it really helps a lot.
She was amazing getting that up, and luckily she didn't take all her files. She's great. No, yeah. So I was just talking to her the other day. So she's loving what she's doing, but I do miss my Grace. She was fun.
Yeah, I used to say every show needs a Grace.
Right? Amazing Grace. But it's fun now because we're doing the rotating co-hosts. And one, it's a added benefit is that they usually share it to their audience. So I get some other people coming on, and it gives a little bit of dynamic. Who's going to show up this week with this crazy bearded guy? Like tomorrow, it's Katie Fox from Ecamm's going to be on there. So that's going to be fun. I've had my friend Connor, who he does Disney tours. Who'd have thought? Yeah. But he's a great host.
He is great.
And I have another friend, Paul, who runs powwows.com, he has the largest live streaming of Native American powwows. It's a huge company, and he gets to come on my show. And so I've been loving it. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so everyone, make sure that you are watching, following, subscribing, wherever. You guys are all over. I usually watch on LinkedIn, Social Media News Live, which that's the name as it is now, but watch out for a name change soon. But it is a fantastic show, and I mean it, and it is great. Does Connor have his own show now?
He's got a podcast. He's been doing a podcast for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually met him when I was speaking. I don't think he does video.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah, we need to talk to him about that.
So why are people so hesitant? I know, obviously, another show that you help produce is Guy Kawasaki, which is a fantastic, huge podcast, and it's audio only. And Connor does an audio only. So maybe not specific to them, but do you feel like there are still people that are just maybe afraid to turn on the camera? Or what is it that keeps people from doing video at this point?
I think the biggest hiccup is a lot of people who have done audio only podcasts in the past. A lot of times they will use Zoom to record their podcasts, which is horrible, by the way. Don't do it. Use Ecamm.
Yeah.
But they're used to that. But there's so many times their guests say, I'm not camera ready. This is going to be audio. They're really worried about their guests. And I'm like, I've never had, because they know if you start doing it as a show, like video, they're not going to ask that question. And they're going to, dress up and go out of the house sometimes. So let them just do it. Yeah, there's so much on the table. Even my show, which doesn't get a ton of views over on YouTube, it's still people come and watch it and comment. And I'm like, there's so much you can do with video. So I'm a big fan of doing both.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Jeff. I think even if there's that fear of going live, you can record it and then upload it, right?
Yeah.
So don't feel like, oh, I'm worried because we're live and we might say something wrong. Then record it. But you have that video that you can now repurpose and drive people back to either listen to the podcast or watch the episode. And that's where I think a lot of us miss out. And that's where I appreciate Chris so much. And I'm grateful for what he does for us with Dealcasters, because I know we're getting a lot of views because he's taking those clips and repurposing it on all the tubes. I think that's the future. I think there's still just such a small percentage that is doing it. And even when you look at content creation in general, right? You talk about people creating content. Like LinkedIn has 900 million, whatever you want to call them, subscribers. And I think it's less than 3% of the people on LinkedIn are actually creating content.
Yeah. That's a good point, Jim, because we move in the circles where we see big people like Amy Porterfield, and we see Amari Smith and some people that you interview, and having you guys on my show, people who are at this level creating content. And you think, why am I even doing it? Because I only have 50 views or whatever. But go to your Sunday school class or go to your church, your PTA meeting or whatever, and look around the room, and how many people there are creating content? Probably not any of them. And you are doing that. And those 50 people can trickle down to so much opportunity that you can get from just doing a consistent live show or putting out content consistently once a week or whatever your schedule is. Most people are not doing what you're doing. And we have to remember that, because we are on this space. We're looking at everybody else. Oh, I really wish I could edit like Chris. Oh, I really wish I was a Marine like Jim and I could have the platform that I could talk about. And you compare yourself to other people, right? And you can't do that. You have to start where you're at. Everybody starts at zero. When you first start a live show, no one will be there. And a really cool hack for that is do what I used to do when I was a magician, and do plants in the audience. Like you plant people, you invite your friends on, hey, I'm going live here. Can you ask this question? And then that gets the ball rolling. I used to do that all the time when I first started out. And so use your friends, use them hard.
Make sure they're good friends though.
Yeah.
That's fantastic advice. It's absolutely fantastic advice. Is like you said, walk into your church and look around the room, and how many of those people are doing something? We've got the blinders on, right? And we're like content creators, content entrepreneurs, and we're doing all of this stuff. And in actuality, we are still a fraction of a percentage of the overall people. It's like when people used to say, why would I create a podcast? There are just so many podcasts. Guess what? There may be 3.5 million podcasts out there, but only 20% of them are active.
Most people stop after the 7th episode. They stop making them after the 7th episode.
Well, when Anchor first launched and it was free to do it, like everybody was doing one podcast on the internet, right? And so it was like professors were setting up courses. Okay, set up a podcast. Oh, there's a free hosting service. I don't have to pay $20 to listen. So boom. Right. So there's like millions of podcasts with one episode. And don't look at the stats. Like everyone quits. And it's just most people don't want to do the work necessary, the consistency, and learning day after day and stick with it to be successful. Most people don't. And I'm just
congratulations.
I
was going to say congratulations to Catherine Lane. She has 10 years of podcasting.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. I think I have a sound effect. I think I have a sound effect for that somewhere. Congratulations, Catherine. There you go. It's like the stock Rodecaster Pro 2 applause. It really is. I'm sorry. And Jenny Gold's in the house. Jenny Gold, thank you for being our plant. No, I'm kidding. We don't have any plants anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. But Jenny, thank you for coming. And let me see if let me make sure I didn't miss anyone. Catherine, thank you so much for all of this. And this is 10 years. That's a lot. That is, so you want to talk about consistency. Whew, now I'm comparing
I think she
myself.
said earlier that she started adding video. Was that her?
Yes, she did. Mm-hmm. She did.
Yeah, that it's actually getting more downloads than her podcast. And that's the thing is, it sounds so weird, but a lot of discovery happens over on YouTube for podcasts. And Tom Webster at one time was saying that there's more listens on YouTube than Apple Podcasts or something like that, because there's no way to track it. Like it's not until they started doing this podcasting thing, it was hard to track. So yeah, I think a lot of discovery is happening over on YouTube, and that's awesome.
It just goes back to, if you've got a podcast, why not create some video for it, even if it's just doing shorts or taking 5 minutes out of it. And here's the highlight. Chris has done that with some of our previous episodes, where he'll just do like a highlight reel, like here's 5 minutes where we're like talking with Kelly Roach, and if you want to watch the full episode, this is where you go. I think that in and of itself is a great way to take your video and drive more traffic.
And I know Megan Powers is here, and she's done like live video and podcasting for years too. It's that consistency. It really is. And it's hard. It's hard doing one. It's not easy, or like you said, everybody would be doing it. But once you get in that groove, I don't know anybody who's been consistent and not seen some sort of benefit out of it. I just don't. Right. I think somebody who's been consistent and doesn't give up, there's always some benefit that happens at the end.
Yeah, part of it is just getting better, just the reps, right? You don't go to the gym once and come back shredded. You got to keep going, and that makes me like, I need to go to the gym now.
I used to lift weights, but they're so heavy.
We waited all show for the best dad joke, and we got it.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, jeffsieh.com is where you go to see the headbeard of Social Media News Live. Make sure you go and watch, follow, subscribe Social Media News Live. And the Descript 101 course is launching soon. I signed up. I know that there are a ton of people that can't wait for this, me being one of them, because I'm always asking Jeff, hey, what do you do? What do you do? And finally, I'm like, I'm done bugging him. I'm just going to get the course. I'm going to get it soup to nuts, and I'm going to quit bugging Jeff Sieh. So jeffsieh.com/descript101 for those that are listening on the podcast. We'll put the link in the show notes as well. Jeff, man, this has been even more awesome than I thought it would be. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everyone who has joined us today. Jenny, Megan, Ross, as Catherine, thank you for, amazing contributions from all of you. If I forgot anyone, Denise, thanks for joining us, and make sure you go and follow Jeff Sieh, jeffsieh.com, Social Media News Live, as well as the new Descript course and all of the things. And as always, don't fear the gear.